Yay, hammered that.
All right, so it is talking about the Sabbath year. Now, there is a little bit of a discussion here because we need to make sure we understand. This is not talking about the year of Jubilee. That is a different thing. Okay. This is the Sabbath year. So this is every 7th year. Okay. There are some things that are similar. And I learned a few things that I did not know how all that worked. So we'll talk about it as we go forward.
I got a question.
Okay.
Because like in my Bible above the chapter, it says the sabbatical year.
Uh-huh.
Isn't a sabbatical where you leave your home and go somewhere else?
So that is how we term it. But what is the root of it? So look at it. If you took out the ICAL and put an
Sabbath.
A. So a sabbatical from work is you take a period of time off to go do something else, to rest.
Okay.
Now, some people will take a sabbatical because they're writing a book or whatever, but that's the root of that is the Sabbath, the rest.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and so
it says the law of the debts.
And that's what it is, but it deals with the Sabbath year.
Okay.
So
that's all I was wondering why it said that.
At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release. Now, here is the interesting part of this. Okay, so what it's saying is you start year 1, okay, and you go forward, and the 7th year is the Sabbath year. Okay. And is the year that, right. At the end of the Sabbath year, when the Sabbath year ends, what it's saying is all loans are forgiven.
Wouldn't that be great?
Oh, I wish that was great.
Okay.
Okay. But that doesn't count with if you put yourself into like slavery and or
right.
That's different. Or
that is a different discussion.
Sold off your property. That's a different.
Yes.
Just like personal debts. Like I bought.
Now there are some of these that it does say if your brother, a Hebrew man or Hebrew woman, is sold to you, he shall serve you 6 years, and in the 7th you shall let him go free. The issue is that watch, it's the way this ends up working. The year of Jubilee is the 7th 7.
Oh.
Okay, so it's the Sabbath of the Sabbath years.
Okay.
And so what actually appears to be part of this discussion is, and there is a little bit of unclearness in some of this, and I'll be fair that I say this. Okay. This is specific. The Jubilee involves the land.
Okay.
So if you sell your property, it is reverted back every 50th year.
Okay.
Now, that brings up the discussion that I was going to bring into. Somehow in my head, I always had it the idea that it was at the end of the 50th year, then the year of Jubilee happens. But that's not how that works.
Beginning of the 50th year?
It's the beginning of the 50th year. So it's the 7th Sabbath year.
Okay.
Okay. So, and this is why that matters, and I'll explain, is I always wondered how that worked whenever you had the Sabbath year, then another year that you couldn't grow any crops. But that's not it. The 49th year. So if you think about it, okay, so your 50th year of life is the year between your 49th birthday and your 50th birthday. When you turn 50, you have lived 50 years. So your 50th year of life is between 49 and 50.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So the same discussion here works in, because at the end of every 7 years is how it phrases it here.
Okay.
Okay. So you have the 6 years, then you have the 7th year, which is the Sabbath year. And at the end of the Sabbath year, then you forgive debts.
Gotcha.
So the beginning of the 50th year is when it returns back to whoever.
And then that year culminates at 50. Okay. So between 49 and 50 is all the year of Jubilee.
So when it starts again, do you count that year as one,
Yes. No. So it would,
or you have to wait a year?
right. So that would be it'd be the first year. So it ends on year one. So that would be 0. So the 50th, the 50th start to the year would be year 0, and then 0 to 1 would be the first year, and it goes forward.
Like from January to December,
Right.
then that'd be 31st of December, that's 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now for the Jews, it would be September 1st to August 31st, or not exactly. It's the 7th month. So it's weird how this works. And
7th month is July.
well, but that's not in the Jewish culture.
Oh, that's right.
So
That's right.
the years for that process begin on the first day of the 7th month of the Jewish year, which is the Feast of Trumpets. Okay. The Jews call it Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets. Okay. That is the first day of their year. Now, their religious calendar, and it's weird that we get into this, but this is how this works. Their religious calendar actually begins in the spring with Passover. Passover is in their first month of their religious calendar. But the calendar for this begins in our calendar in the month of September. Okay. That the first day of their 7th month falls within our month of December, because their first day of their first month starts in late February, early March.
Okay.
Oh, their calendar works a little different than ours. But what it says at the end of every 7 years, so it would be on that first day of the 7th month, at the end of the Sabbath year, then this is the manner of the release. Every creditor shall release what he has lent to his neighbor. He shall not exact it of his neighbor, his brother, because the Lord's release has been proclaimed. So I loaned my brothers $50. We hit the end of that 7 years, and that debt is forgiven.
That's the problem, kind of hurts people.
Well, but there is a very interesting, and we'll get to it here in just a second, how this works. It says, of a foreigner you may exact it, but whatever of yours is with your brother, your hand shall release. So if you've loaned to someone who is not a Jew, not a follower of God, then you can hold on to that debt past the 7th year. But for a Jew, or one who is worshiping of the God of the Jews, then you have to release it. Now, here's what happens in verse 4. But there will be no poor among you, for the Lord will bless you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess, if only you will strictly obey the voice of the Lord your God. So here is the idea, and here is why he says this. It is a matter of, in all fairness, it's a matter of faith. Okay. So remember, the New Testament gets into the same discussion. And it says that if you go and you borrow money, if you loan money to another person as a follower of Jesus, no interest. And it really goes so far as don't really expect to get paid back. So the getting paid back is a bonus. And this is almost how this always works. When you loan someone money, if you are a follower of God, when you loan somebody money to help them out of a rough spot, then what you get out of it is you get to follow God.
And help somebody in need.
Okay. And let God bless you. See, if instead, and remember that this is a parable we get into in the New Testament, what is the story? It says this guy owed a king a tremendous amount of money. an amount of money he could have never, ever possibly had any shot at paying back.
Mhm.
Okay. And the king forgives him his debt. And he goes to his buddy and is unwilling to forgive a tiny debt.
When the king just forgave him for
Uh-huh.
huge thing.
And the king goes, okay, if you're not going to forgive your brother's debt, then why should I forgive the one? I forgave you all of that and you wouldn't forgive him. Okay, then I'm resetting your debt is basically what happens. That is a biblical discussion. Remember, talking about sin, and this is part of this discussion too. What does the Lord's Prayer say?
Forgive us our debts.
As what?
As we forgive our debtors. As we
Forgive our
others.
debts as we forgive the debts that we owe you, God, as we forget the debts that are owed us. Okay. So what he's saying is, yes, it's okay to loan money and it's okay to expect them to pay it back. But if they don't, then trust me. And see, it's going to go even further as we get into this. He says, because I will bless you if you'll follow my commandment. This is one of those. So flip it. Okay. And you see the kind of this discussion too. If you flip it and you say, oh, I'm not going to follow the Lord on this, and I'm going to hold this guy forever. How much do we owe God?
Oh, so much.
And is God going to bless us if we are unwilling to follow his command? So then guess what? It actually ends up that the money that we didn't get from that guy probably isn't going to help us much if God chooses not to bless us.
Yeah, we could never pay God back.
Right. So being careful to do all that I command you, for the Lord your God will bless you as he promised. Okay. And you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. So if you will follow me, then you may lend to many, many nations, but you won't be the one who does borrowing. You'll rule over many nations, but they won't rule over you. By the way, let's dig into this discussion going into the discussion of a nation that God has blessed. There was a time in American history where we were the lender to many nations, but we borrowed from none. That is no longer true.
We're so in debt to China.
So what really happened? We stopped being obedient to God. And by the way, that is part of what gets into this later. He says, if you'll follow me, you'll lend to many and borrow from none. But later, when he's talking about the curses, he says, if you don't follow me, then you'll borrow from nations and you'll lend to none, which is what
we're doing.
So he goes on, he says, if among you, one of your brothers should become poor in any of the towns within your land that the Lord your God has given you. Okay. So let's say that one of your brothers falls into hard times and he is in desperate need. You shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother. But you shall open your hand to him and lend him sufficient for his need, whatever that may be. If I'm blessing you and you find somebody who's in need, then you help them. Okay. And then watch how much further this goes. Take care lest there be an unworthy thought in your head that says, oh, the 7th year is near and
I'm going to have to let go of all this
next
money.
year's the 7th year, so I won't get this money back. Now, watch. And your eye look grudgingly on your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry to the Lord against you. And you be guilty of sin because you didn't help your brother. You shall give to him freely, and your heart shall not be grudging when you give to him. Because for this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in all that you undertake. When you see someone in need, you help them. Now, I want to make sure that we say this. It's talking about fellow believers. or it's talking about their fellow men. It doesn't say go loan to all the foreigners. It says when you see one of your brothers, help them. Okay. And then he goes on, for there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore, I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy and to the poor in your land.
You know, there's ad on TV of this. Yes, I don't know. Like they can help,
Uh-huh.
and you wonder if that's a true deal or somebody's trying to get you to send money to them and they never get the money.
Mhm.
So I get from the church, so the church takes care of that.
I can understand that. There are a lot of those. The funny thing is there are two organizations that I know of that you can pretty much trust. First one is the North American Mission Board, the International Mission Board, the Send Relief. Okay. The other one is the Salvation Army. And here's how I can tell you that with confidence. Okay. The president of the Salvation Army makes a living wage. But like some of these groups that, you know, adopt a person or whatever, not to say they're all bad, but some of them, their president and CEOs make millions and millions of dollars.
Everybody else makes nothing.
That's what I like about St. Jude. I know personally what they say. So Scarlett, they paid everything, and she goes back for a checkup, pay all of that. I know what they say is true.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are those that are good to sponsor, but what you have to do is he does call us to be wise, but he also calls us to help. Okay.
And I feel like I help to my church. Like I give to him, and the church gives to the
Other
mission board and
places.
stuff.
Right.
And it's taken care of.
It does. Okay. So if your brother, okay, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman is sold to you, he shall serve you 6 years, and in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. Okay. And you will not let him go, when you let him go free from you, you'll not let him go empty-handed.
So you'll give him food and provisions and whatnot, so he can get where he's going.
Yeah, you shall
Which is pretty awesome. Like, that's pretty cool.
You will give to him what he needs to survive.
Yeah.
Okay. From your flock, your threshing floor, so meat, grain, wine, drink.
Yeah.
Okay. As the Lord has blessed you, you shall give to him. You shall remember that you are a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore, I command you this today. So here's the idea. In the same way that, remember, your ancestors were slaves in Egypt, and I redeemed you out. So I have the right to tell you that you need to redeem your slaves and let them go free every 7 years, and that you need to provide for them so that they don't leave you and die.
Just like the Egyptians provided for you as you were leaving.
Yep. So, but if he says to you, okay, I will not go out from you, because he loves you and your household, since he is well off with you. Okay. Now, this brings up an important discussion. We are not saying that slavery is a good thing. Okay. What God is doing is he is giving commands on how to handle it. Okay. So here is what this says. You are to treat them well, number one. This is very clearly throughout all of this. You're to treat your slaves well. Okay. For your brothers and sisters, you are to let them go at the end of 7 years. You're to provide for their needs when you let them go. But let's say that you're in a household, you have a large farm, a large ranch. That's today's vernacular. and you have a guy who was indebted to you, so they sold themselves to you into slavery. And you hit the end of the 7 years, it's time for them to go free, and they go, look, to be honest, I get fed better here.
I like it. Can I stay?
Maybe, and by the way, this comes up later, maybe I met my wife while I was here. I met a woman and I married her. And we have kids. By the way, this is the rule that it says. When you are a slave, you go out the same way you came in.
You didn't
So-
come in with the wife,
So
you'll
if you
get
came
one.
in with a wife, then you got to take your wife when you leave. If you came in and got married to someone else then you went out alone until it was her turn to be free. Okay. But the idea is that he says, I won't go out with you. I don't want to leave. I'm well off with you. You treat me well. I have plenty of food. I am, and maybe even some authority in the house, because there were slaves that were responsible for teaching kids, and there were slaves who were responsible for important things in the household. And he says, I don't want to leave. Okay. Then you shall take an awl, which is a chisel. Okay.
Wow.
And you shall put it through his ear into the door. He shall be your slave forever. So you mark him as one who has chosen
To stay.
to be a slave. Okay.
Same with your females.
And same with your female slaves. It shall not seem hard to you when you let him go free from you. For half the cost of a hired worker, he has served you for 6 years. So the Lord will bless you in all that you do. Now that's an interesting discussion, because this is what it says. What he says, you shouldn't begrudge letting the slave go at the end of 7 years, because you have gotten all the work he gave you,
Yeah, the whole time he was there.
and all you had to do is provide for his meals. You didn't have to pay him a wage.
Yeah,
For half the cost of a hired man, you got his service for 7 years
6 years.
or for 6 years. And the Lord will bless you if you do this. Okay. Like I said, the big thing, and the part of the all is really a discussion of making it a point. Okay. Because it's also for your even here, it's for their witness. Well, you've had that guy in your household for 15 years. Did you not let him go? Well, then he goes, no, look, I chose to stay. There was a marking that took place whenever you were exempt from this rule because of your own choice. Okay. Now, then we move into another discussion. It says, all the firstborn males that are born of your herd and flock, you shall dedicate to the Lord your God. Okay. You shall do no work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You shall eat it, you and your household, before the Lord your God, year by year, at the place that the Lord will choose. Okay. But if it has any blemish, if it is lame or blind or has any serious blemish whatsoever, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. You shall eat it within your towns. The unclean and the clean alike may eat it as though it were a gazelle or a deer. Only you shall not eat its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. Now, remember, we've talked about the reason for this rule for the firstborn.
That's God's portion.
Well, but it's more than that.
Oh, it's because also the Passover.
The firstborn, he didn't kill their firstborns.
Yeah.
So now you give him the firstborn.
The firstborn.
So what it says is, when you have a firstborn lamb or a goat or whatever, or ox or whatever it may be, it belongs to the Lord. Now, some of this matters on timing. and it's fun to say this. So you have a sheep or a goat that you have. You don't wait to bring him to the Lord to eat as an offering until after you've had your first round of shearing.
Why is that?
Well, because you don't get both. It belongs to the Lord.
That's why you don't share them.
Well, but here's the idea. It's the idea that this firstborn belongs to God and it's to be offered to God. And so you don't, and this is almost the way it works. You don't steal profit from it before you give it to God. See, that sheep is to be brought to the,
With all its wool and all that, because you can sell the wool.
right, is to be brought to the Lord, and it is to be a gift to him. Well, if you go in and wait and understand, this is part of the idea. You hold off an extra month before you go and you shear him and get the
Wool.
as if it was your sheep. And then, okay, now I'll bring it to God. No, you don't do work with the firstborn. You don't shear the firstborn before you bring it to the Lord, or certainly until it's been redeemed. Now, remember that a donkey is a little different. A donkey, you had the choice. Okay. The donkey, you could redeem it with a lamb, or you could break its neck. Okay. Because a donkey wasn't a sacrificial animal.
I don't think you don't eat one either.
Okay. But the ox,
Everything else.
so you don't go spend the summer using your firstborn ox to plow and then, oh, now I'll go offer him to God. No, it belongs to God. It gets brought to him. Then it says, but if it's unworthy of a sacrifice, so let's say the firstborn sheep or goat has a maimed leg. Well, then it's not suitable for sacrifice. But that doesn't mean that then, okay, I don't have to follow the rules. And I can shear it and all of that. It says you take it and you eat it in your village.
With your brother.
With your brothers and sisters.
Alike.
Okay. So it's talking about this idea of offering what belongs to God. Now, chapter 16 begins talking about Passover. Okay. Observe the month of Abib, which is the first month of their year, their religious year, and keep the Passover to the Lord your God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. Okay. And you shall offer the Passover sacrifice to the Lord your God from the flock or the herd at the place that the Lord will choose to make his name dwell there. Okay, so the tabernacle or the temple. Okay.
Which most people have to travel a long ways to.
Well, but remember, as much as we say that, the nation of Israel is not huge.
Well, okay, that's true.
Okay.
I guess you're right. It's pretty small.
Let me look. I don't remember.
Well, none of those countries are very good.
What?
I said none of those countries are very big.
No.
Are they? Kind of like the eastern states, pretty small. Like you go through 4 or 5 states in one day and come to Texas, you can't get through it in a day.
Right.
Yeah.
So Israel's about the same size as New Jersey.
It's not very big.
Mm-hmm. So Israel is 21,000 square kilometers.
Did you hear that too?
Yes, it was a skateboarder.
Oh, okay.
Is the rest of the church locked up?
Yes. So Israel is 21,000 square kilometers. New Mexico is 315,000
So
square
even New
kilometers.
Mexico
Is way bigger.
than Israel.
Right.
Wow, that's weird.
Population wise, it's not.
Yeah, population wise, they got a lot more.
Well, than New Mexico, but not Texas. Hold on just a second. They're skateboarding on our sidewalk. And I don't mind them doing that. Would like them not to run into it.
Only place to skateboard around here.
Yeah.
I know I used to skateboard. That was super sad when we moved here
Yeah.
because there was nowhere to skateboard.
I don't like skateboarding, but stay away from the cars, please.
Like we did a skateboard on the other side of the road.
Yeah, you can't skateboard in the roads.
Well, they're not the normal skateboards. They're the long
Oh,
boards that
longboard
you
you
can.
could. If I had a longboard, yeah.
But anyway, so 3 times a year, unless there were extenuating circumstances, the children of Israel were asked to come to where the tabernacle was for a celebration.
Yeah.
Passover,
Yeah, certain ones they have to come.
right?
For.
Pentecost, and then the Day of Atonement. Or no, booths.
Okay.
Okay. So, it goes on. So at the place that the Lord will choose to make his name dwell there, you shall eat no leavened bread with it. Okay, so unleavened bread. 7 days you shall eat it with unleavened bread, the bread of affliction. For you came out of the land of Egypt in haste. That all the days of your life you may remember the day when you came out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so remember that part of this discussion is that they were in such a hurry to leave Egypt, they didn't have time to let bread rise.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is why the unleavened bread.
Okay. But it goes a little further. It just says, no leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory for 7 days. So completely remove leaven completely. Okay. So, nor shall any of the flesh that you sacrifice on the evening of the first day remain all night until morning. Okay, so first of all, no leavening. Second,
No leftovers.
on the first night. So the first night is when you had the Passover, when you had the actual Passover service.
Yes.
And on that day, no leftovers.
No leftovers.
Okay.
Because that was the rule whenever they did have to leave Egypt, because they couldn't
Right.
leave leftovers.
Mhm. Now, remember, and it is interesting that whenever we look at it, it doesn't bring it up in Deuteronomy, but it certainly brings it up in Exodus, that what it says is it gives rules for how they cook it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like with the guts in or
Right. So
it's
you did
in,
not
stuff like that.
remove, you
No
did not
broken
remove
bones.
the entrails,
No broken bones.
and it had to be cooked by fire. It had to be roasted.
Mhm.
Okay. In fact, Jews today often use barbecue grills. Okay. Now, the reason for that, and I don't know
And
if
they
they
still
follow
do
all
it
the,
with
I
the
don't know if
nuts
they
and
follow
stuff.
all of that. But what the purpose of that is, in case
So
you were
it's
wondering,
nasty.
well, it tastes bitter. It's not nasty,
What
but
I got Passover meat is bitter.
it's bitter. Okay. Why would it be bitter?
All the insides and
Well, but why would that be important?
keep you from eating it.
To remind you that slavery was bitter.
Mm.
Okay. And by the way,
Oh, because he's taking you from a
Okay.
better situation.
so then what you ate it with was green onions, garlic, herbs that are bitter.
Well, I like garlic and I'm cool with green onions.
But
I can
but-
eat that raw.
but you don't eat garlic raw.
Yes, I do.
Well, most people don't. Garlic has a very interesting taste
I
when it's
love
raw.
it. Yeah, I love
Okay.
it raw.
But the idea is the
Mhm.
vegetables they used were bitter, and the entire meal was full of foods that were bitter. Why? Because their slavery was bitter.
Yes.
Okay.
Which
Now
makes
into
sense.
the New Testament, what is it? It is that the death of Messiah was bitter.
It was bitter. Which it
Okay.
was.
You have been purchased from bitter slavery.
And that's
To
also
sin.
why there's no broken bones, huh? You don't break any of their bones, and because Jesus didn't have a single broken bone.
Right.
And they
Now,
have the mirror.
hold on. Let's go the direct direction though. The reason Jesus couldn't have any broken bones.
Is because of the lamb, right?
Right.
Because the lamb couldn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is why the lamb did. Well, oh, okay. So it's the other way around.
So yeah, sort of. Now, is God looking forward and seeing Jesus' death when he makes the rules? Yes.
Yes.
But the reason that Jesus died in the way he died, with no broken bones, is to fulfill the requirements that God gave
for the lamb.
for the Passover lamb. Okay.
Okay.
In the same way that, by the way, if you ever look at it, and I'm not going to move there, but in a few chapters, we're going to see an interesting discussion of how the Jews saw the death of hanging. Okay. The Bible says in Deuteronomy that anyone who hangs from a tree is cursed.
Really?
Okay. So
Glad that never took.
now what? No, what it's talking about is as a form of execution.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So remember that the Jews would not practice any of those particular. Okay.
Execution.
There is one character in all of. Now I'm going to say that, and I'd have to go back and look and verify, but there is one major character in all of Scripture who dies hanging in a tree.
Yeah, that's the one. The Judas Assyria, right?
No.
Oh wait, the one that.
Well, Judas hung himself. That is a second one. The first one in the Old Testament is David's son Absalom.
Really?
Okay. Now it tells the story of Absalom, and what it says is that Absalom was this, breathtakingly good-looking guy. Okay. Who is the dude on all the covers of all the romance novels with the long hair and I can't think of his name. But there was this guy all through my growing up that, he would show up on TV and he had these
Fabio.
Yeah, Fabio. Okay. That apparently Absalom was that type of guy.
Yeah, with the long
flowing
mane.
long hair, oh man.
He is being chased by the armies of Israel on horseback. And as he is running away, his hair gets tangled up in a tree.
Oh, man.
And he is pulled off his horse, and the armies of Israel find him hanging by his hair from this tree. And they kill him.
Why is he from the tree?
Okay. Anyone who hangs from a tree is cursed. Now, the issue is that whenever we talk about the cross, that would fit under that discussion.
Yeah, because he's on a wooden cross and he's hanging on it. It doesn't specify if it has to be by the neck.
And he's carrying all of our sins.
But that's the point. Okay. In fact, Isaiah brings it up. He is seen in his death as a criminal and is rejected by God.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? He's hanging from a tree. He has become our curse.
So that he could pay for our curse. Just like he is.
Same thing with some of the other symbols that involve the crucifixion. Okay. So what does Jesus have on his head throughout the crucifixion?
A crown of thorns.
Crown made of thorns. Where do thorns first appear in the Bible?
Genesis.
What chapter?
I want to say chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Okay. Now, why do they appear?
Because they are our punishment for our sinning in the garden. It is part of you work with the ground, toil, and it will give you thorns and you will sweat. Yes, I know that.
So, a thorn is a representation of the punishment for sin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does a crown represent?
The king.
So Jesus has become
Royalty.
on the cross the king of sin.
Oh. Hey, that makes.
So he is wearing a crown made of God's punishment for sin. Okay. What does the New Testament tell us? And I know we've chased a rabbit, but this is important. What does the New Testament tell us about the cross and our sin? It tells us that when Jesus hung on the cross, our sin was put upon him. And whenever he was taken down from the cross, our sin was still nailed there.
Was left on the cross.
And so he goes into the grave for 3 days, and then he rises from the grave in victory
Over death.
But our sin is still dead.
It's still in the cross.
It's still on the cross.
Okay, I got a real quick question, and this is way off.
Okay.
Kinda. So in Revelation, is that who they're talking about has the keys to death? Is Jesus? That's
Yes.
what okay.
The Lamb.
I told Lynette was who that she's like, what does that mean? I'm like, I think they're talking about Jesus right there, but I'll not my concern.
So which chapter are you specifically talking about? Because it could be
Probably in the beginning.
Okay.
Like, because we didn't get very far into it. She kind of, and you told me to get off the subject.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
So,
Okay. So
I just didn't
yes,
wanna tell
the
her
one
off.
who has the keys to death and the grave,
And yeah,
the one who is in chapter
Hades,
4,
yeah.
who is worthy to open the scroll and
yes,
all of those
that's
things,
the one.
that is all Jesus.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, that's what I thought.
Jesus is the only one worthy.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
what made sense to me.
And that is the entire point of that section. Okay, now are there some other things going on there? Yes, but the entire point of that section is
to tell
that,
us how worthy Jesus
well,
is.
and watch the progression of it. Okay. You have God seated on the throne of heaven. Okay. And you have all of those that are worshiping God around him. And they are asking, they see at the right, at God's side, a scroll.
Mhm.
And it's written all over, it has seals and all of this.
That's reals.
And they're saying, we can't move on until it's been opened. And they look everywhere. Is there someone who can open this? Is there someone who's worthy to open it? And suddenly one of them goes, here he comes. The one who's worthy, the Lamb who was slain, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, all of the things about Jesus. And so suddenly the one who has been both God and man, the one who has died for the sins of all mankind, who humbled himself and is now, because of the Father, been placed on the pinnacle of authority.
Mhm.
Okay. Who at the name of Jesus, every knee bows, every tongue confesses that he's Lord.
Yes.
He is the only one in all of existence
That's worthy.
that's worthy to open this scroll.
Aside from God himself.
Well, but the phrasing that it uses is that
He
the
is
scroll
holy.
has been designated that it is not God's job to open it.
It's
It is the one who is worthy.
the one who's worthy. That
Okay.
makes me think of, if you're worthy enough, you can get the sword out of the stone.
Okay.
That's what it makes me think of.
By the way, don't miss it. That's where that legend comes from.
Oh, is it?
Well, not specifically, but what is the idea of that entire legend?
He who is worthy, a
Now-
worthy knight can slay the dragon.
But remember how that is phrased within that mythology, because it's a Christianization of a mythological story. Is that God had said, the way I'm going to tell you who is supposed to be king is I'm going to put this sword in an anvil in a rock, and the person who's worthy
Can pull it.
And all these people come and try, and none of them are worthy.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is a much higher level of discussion.
Yeah.
This is the entire of all of existence. There is one person who is worthy to usher us down the path God has. And it's the Lamb of God. It is his lamb, it is his holy lamb, his son, and so yes, all of this fits in because the description of him in Revelation refers back to what? The cross.
The cross, which refers back to this lamb.
So, by the way, let's just make sure we say this. We'll close with this discussion. We'll pick up with the Feast of Weeks next time. But I want you to see this because there has been a lot of discussion within our culture today about, well, I don't think the Bible's all that important a book. Let me share a little bit of a discussion here. Okay. The Bible is not just a book. It is 66 books written by about 40 different authors.
Yeah.
Over the course of 1,500 years. It has a recognizable theme and flow and content. Let me just say that if you go in and read a series of novels by somebody, you don't get that all the time.
No, you
Written
don't.
within 5 years by one person.
No, you don't.
There is something
Let alone
incredibly
this long.
special about the Bible and the way it works that we can see the power of God behind it.
Well, look how it has lasted.
Yeah.
All right, we are going to stop there. We will pick up
It's the weeks.
next Sunday.
But,
Oh.